Watching News at Prime. All right, let's set the tone for this discussion then. Johannesburg will be one of the biggest prizes in November's local government elections, with less than 3 months to go. Until voting day, political parties are preparing for a fierce contest over who gets to govern South Africa's economic hub. But the rallies, the results and the coalition negotiations are looking at Johannesburg through the people who live and work here. What is the city like for them? What is working? What is failing? And when they vote, what will shape their decision about who should run Johannesburg? Take a listen.
Johannesburg can feel like a very different city depending on where you live. But wherever you are, people depend on the same municipality for the basics: water, electricity, roads, streetlights, and refuse collection. It is a city that has long attracted people looking for work and opportunity. Lebang Matladisha is one of them. He came to Johannesburg hoping to build a better life. Today, he runs his own removal business and lives in Cosmos City.
Then when we came, it was like there's a hope in Johannesburg. But if I have to say what kind of Johannesburg we're looking for a Johannesburg that, that is working, for instance, with, tar road, no potholes, with water, clean water, without cutting water, without telling people, street lights working, and if it's not working, when we call the office or we do the lock, they come and help us. Sometimes the electricity will be gone for 2 weeks, nobody's telling us nothing. So that kind of a thing. With Johannesburg will be a beautiful city. Well, all those things are working. The services are there, everything is there, you know who to talk to. There's that what we're about to pay, the service kind of a thing happening. That's the kind of a Johannesburg we're hoping for.
For him, a working city is not just about comfort. His business depends on being able to move around Johannesburg quickly and reliably. A pothole can delay a delivery, broken traffic lights can cost him time. A prolonged power or water outage can disrupt both his home and his work. And when something goes wrong, he wants to know that there is someone at the municipality who will answer and fix it.
Because that will really slow your business, and when you are late, that with your client, the client can fight with you, send you back. So it's a very important thing, to have the traffic lights that are working, to have, the roads that are working. I think it's very important. So anybody who's going to take over, please, those are the very important thing, critical things to look at.
And then there's the monthly bill. Johannesburg residents are expected to pay for municipal services, even as many complain about incorrect billing, disputed accounts, and services that are not always reliable. That is where the politics of the city meets the household budget. A resident may know very little about what is happening inside a coalition meeting at the city hall, but they know when the water is off. They know when the electricity has been gone for days, and they know when refuse has not been collected, or when a pothole keeps damaging cars on the same road. For residents like Lebang, who governs Joburg has to make the city work regardless of what is happening between political parties.
I will need a service, in other words, a Cosmos City or a Johannesburg that is working, for us, so that we can have a better life. A better life simply means that we must be in a place that is workable. But this moment right now, things are not really looking that good. At all. So my hope and my heart is that as we're going there, we'll be able, with our vote, we can be able to change the situation that we're in terms of service delivery. Yes, it's not good. It's really bad.
In the city of Johannesburg, there's widespread failure that can't be explained by the massive amount of money that gets given to the city of Johannesburg. It's a well-funded municipality. It's also in the center of a city with enormous professional capability. So there's no reason for the failure of finances, for the failure of administration, for the failure of ICT. All of this is available, and yet none of it appears to be working. So what it appears is really that the city is failing because of corruption, potentially, and a failure of governance. The accountability structures are not operating. The irregular expenditure is a pattern over multiple years, and it's not correcting.
Over the next few months, political parties will offer voters competing plans for Johannesburg. They will campaign on service delivery, governance, corruption, and their ability to bring stability back to City Hall. But for voters like Lebang, the test is much simpler. Can I get to work? Will there be water when I open the tap? Will the streetlights work? Will someone answer when I report a problem? And ultimately, which political party do I trust to make Johannesburg work better than it does today? That is the battle for Johannesburg.
All right. Well, let's stay with the battle for the City of Gold. And as more and more parties continue to lure voters to take control of the country's richest metro, we're joined now in studio by my guests. I'm going to start to my far left, OUTA's Wayne Duvenage. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. Ebrahim Fakir is a political analyst, also with us in studio tonight. And then on the virtual platform, Julia Fish is with the organization JoburgCAN. She's a director there. To all of my guests, good to have you here. Thank you very much. I've got the service delivery report card for the city of Joburg. We'll get into that, but for the moment, I'd like to give you each a quick round. Just your own words of what you believe the state of the city of Johannesburg is right now. Let's start with you, Wayne.
Yeah, it's in a dire state. It is a leadership issue. It really does come down to leadership. We've seen that when you change leadership at the top, things can change. It's not going to be difficult to fix Joburg, I can assure you. It's not going to happen overnight. But that's only if you get the right structures in place. As Alex van Heerfer was saying, there is enough money, 85, 90 billion rand a year. It's just being wasted completely. Well, not completely, but a lot of it. If every rand flows to where it should, and you have strong leadership with strong structures, and we fix city power, city water, or Joburg water, and pick it up, this city, you will see a big amount of difference of change in the next 2 to 3 years. It's going to take a good 5 to 10 years to get on top of the broader infrastructure. But I'm excited about Joburg, but you cannot leave the people who created the problem in charge of the solution now. We have an opportunity in 11 weeks' time. We need change. If we have the same ship or the same sailors on the ship after November, it's going to be very, very dire for the city.
Ebrahim?
Yeah, Johannesburg's in a difficult place, in part because I think it's been neglected nationally. Usually, the city of Johannesburg is the city which determines the trajectory for much of the rest of the country. And so it is a vital cog in that regard, firstly. Secondly, I mean, I don't want to repeat a lot of what Wayne is saying, but, you know, one of the failures has been a failure of real oversight. And with oversight comes accountability, and with accountability comes responsiveness. So what you have is a bunch of city leaders who are socially distant, way before COVID was in place, from the people they actually purport to represent, firstly. So they're not actually effectively representing anyone, nor are they, on the flip side, responsive to those people who they claim to represent. Because if they were, they would have spotted many of the problems which exist, okay? Thirdly, is that, I mean, there is the reality that in this milieu of a lack of representation and responsiveness, the political parties are engaged in games of brinkmanship consistently. Now, of course, it's inbuilt into the incentive structure of the electoral system. And I think we need to take a long-term view at looking at both the local government electoral system and the governance system at local level. Firstly, because the separation of powers are not differentiated at municipal level, particularly in metros, which are running huge budgets. So nationally, the effective separation of powers is in place. Locally, it isn't, because the executive is drawn from the council. And so council decisions are fused with executive decision, and that leads to the breakdown in oversight, right? So parties also have to get much more responsible, because I don't think it is palatable that you have a system that we have now in which parties with or let's call them micro parties with minuscule support, actually command executive portfolios. So we need some kind of regulatory intervention to stabilize this. And the coalition's bill that is before Parliament is fundamentally inadequate.
That complaint about parties that have the least amount of support, but deciding that they're going to be put in positions of responsibility. I remember that discussion. Julia, let's come to you very quickly if you can. Your assessment of the state of the city of Johannesburg right now.
Let's be frank. I, as a woman, am joining you by Zoom this evening because I simply don't feel safe traversing the city and the streets of Joburg at night. As your package there said, there's no street lights. The streets aren't safe. The roads aren't tarred. And that is a real experience of a lot of people in the city. And the parts of the city that work are the ones where people can afford to bypass the municipality. The double taxation of community groups, residents associations, central improvement districts, who are doing the work of delivering services, providing security, doing the street cleanups. That is where you actually see the city being able to operate somewhat. And that's because they've bypassed the municipality who is not performing their core mandate, which is delivering services. And much like your other guests, when we're talking about accountability, there's a complete lack of transparency. So when decisions are being made and these things are being implemented upon residents, they don't trust the city to be able to actually do what they say because they often do something completely different. And we can't trace the money, we can't trace the decisions, and we can't hold them accountable, and they're not holding themselves accountable because there's no transparency as to what's happening. They've just paid down a massive debt to Eskom. We have no idea where that money came from and how it's been shifted from other priorities and service delivery priorities. And without that trust, with that trust deficit, every operation and function of the city is not being seen as legitimate. And what we really need from political parties is for them to actually step up and be the adults in the room here. I know at the moment it's silly season politically and they're all vying for our votes. But when it comes to the actual functions in council itself, they argue with each other like preschool children. And with that kind of thing, when we're looking at the possibility of another coalition and more instability, if they can't find common ground, which is serving the residents of the city of Joburg, in between the political fights, we're going to get nowhere slowly.
All right, so let's get into the service delivery report card, and I'm going to put it on our screens in a few seconds. I would like for us to, and there it is up. I'm hoping Julia can possibly see it from her end as well. So the score here, 1 is the best, 8 is the worst. And those are just the basics that we are looking at. The source of this, by the way, it is Statistics South Africa. That's where we are getting this information from. We can actually even look at it from the bigger screen there. Wayne Duvenage, water outages. We're saying the score, 1 is the best, 8 is the worst. Water outages, that stands at 7.
Bad, very bad.
Do you believe that water is probably going to be one of the big election issues into this election? And if so,
absolutely,
who's going to sort it out?
Absolutely. Look, you know, you can go without electricity. If you have the choice between 2, water is the one you will always choose because you need water to cook, to clean, to eat. to drink, to bathe. It's just everything pivots around that. Electricity, you can make other plans temporarily. So it is, that's a really bad report card, quite frankly. And water is going to be a big issue. It has been for a long time. We know that we are losing millions and millions of litres to leaks, and the city knows that, and they've done very little. So, yeah, water is a big problem.
Ebrahim Fakir, can I ask you the same question around water, but perhaps a leadership question? Who is going to sort this out when Julia says political parties tend to act like children? Someone has got to be the adult in the room.
Well, you know, sure, that is true, but there's an institutional problem. I wouldn't want to say that this is just about leadership. The institutional problem is tied to leadership, but let's understand this. In the city of Johannesburg, Joburg Water is an arm's length utility wholly owned by the city. The city obviously must be overseeing what happens, but when this utility was created back at the time when Egoli 2002, the plan that was put in place to amalgamate the entire city, all these 10 utilities or entities were created, right? And they were created at an arm's length from the city. They're wholly owned by the city, so the city is the full shareholder. But what the city then did is that it decoupled the political oversight over these utilities and made it an internal issue with boards and with internal supervisory management. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that the revenue that they generate is not ring-fenced and does not stay with Joburg Water. All of the utilities, by the way. It goes into a central pot, which then gets budgeted as the whole city. Now that has advantages and disadvantages, right? The third is that when you create this process or you create this structure, you are building in, and here's the thing about where South Africa's politics has to get better at understanding what's going on. Let's look at what the incentive structure built in is. Boards, which are political appointments, become ripe for capture. And by ripe for capture means that you then start relaxing and weakening procurement, supply chain, equipment, and so on. Fourth is when these utilities were created, they were all run on the basis of subcontracts, of supplier development programs, and so on. Now, these guys who are private entities who are providing a service for maintenance, for repair, and so on, they have it in their interest to ensure that they're not going to fix everything 100%, or they're going to break things because it's just a self-generating model of business.
Right, exactly. Julia, I'm going to borrow from part of what Ebrahim Fakir has said here. The governance structure or institutional structure. Refuse removal is fast becoming a flashpoint as well. We said the score in this scorecard, 1 is the best, 8 is the worst. Refuse removal stands at number 5, which means that we have a problem. What's the problem at Pick It Up? And do you believe it can be fixed before it becomes worse than, water situation?
Pick It Up used to be a particularly reliable service. Most residents in suburban parts of the city didn't really have a problem with their refuse removal, and they also enjoyed the additional assistance of a recycling program where they deliver bags to you. This is almost unheard of, that you get this reliable system within Joburg, and most residents were happy with it. However, what we've seen in the last few months is a change of the contractor in that realm who's not delivering to the same extent, and a protracted labor dispute with the city of Joburg, which leans into the liquidity crisis that we're seeing across the city in general, where there simply isn't money being given to the service utilities that are supposed to run this function. And they also don't have a clear, complete supply chain management structure within their own entity. So things like fleet hiring, fleet maintenance is all outsourced. Yeah. And because of that, they don't have cash on hand to be able to pay these contractors. They're down tools. There's been a hiring freeze because of the liquidity problems. So we had people protesting outside the Pick It Up depots and preventing the trucks from leaving site. And then it also leans into the politically facilitated agreement, which is supposed to pay lower-end workers more money over the next few years, which they've already given to the executives and top-level management, but not to the people on the ground who are actually delivering the service. So at the end of the day, that system has fallen back. We also have a problem where, despite being warned 3 years ago that landfill sites were going to reach their capacity, they didn't do anything about it. They got a loan, well, they got awarded money from the Dutch government to be able to do a waste to energy program, which would have also brought down the cost of electricity in the city of Joburg, but they didn't actually implement it.
Yeah.
They haven't appointed a manager to be able to do the structure. So now 2 of the 4 landfill sites in the city of Joburg have reached capacity. So we're having to spend 150 million rand a year on private waste sites. So that's just a microcosm what's happening at Pick It Up, but it affects all of the others. And while Treasury has said we need to implement something called the Municipal Services Trading Reforms, which will ring-fence those entities, we've ring-fenced Joburg Water from the 1st of July without actually having an agreement or understanding of how that ring-fencing is going to work. So they've launched this plane in the air while they're still building it. And Joburg Water at the moment is not getting the money from their revenue that they're supposed to get from being ring-fenced.
Yeah.
At least they've stopped the sweeping arrangements. But at the end of the day, they are in severe financial strain and they're unable to actually complete the CapEx projects, like fixing the water infrastructure and the leaking reservoirs. And those are at this point about a year late in when they're supposed to have been delivered.
Yeah, and their finances are indeed in severe distress. One of the managing directors was in studio some time ago to explain exactly this. Let's move to the next report card, Wayne Duvenage, because I'd like you to weigh in on this now. And we are calling it the state of the city. And I'd like for us to look at the residents that are living in poverty. Next to that is residents who have to travel more than 30 minutes to work, and then jump all the way to the last one, and it is the rate of unemployment that stands at 8. If you combine those 3, just those 3, what seems to be the problem in the city of Johannesburg?
Well, from our perspective, the city has been taking far too long in dealing with its integrated public transport system. So you have too many people relying on getting to cars, to work in cars or vehicles. We should have had by now, 30 years in, we've had a spatial development problem inherited from apartheid, and we should have been tackling that right in the beginning, because I think the old saying is that, a sign of a developed city is not when the poor people drive to work in cars. It's when rich people use public transport. And we haven't even got there. Gautrain is a very narrow corridor serving Joburg and Tshwane. That's it, in the airport. What we should have had by now is far more reliable public infrastructure put in place, not just PRASA, and PRASA's been a mess, as we know. But monorails serving, bringing people in from the outskirts of the city in very, very quickly, safe. The city has done nothing. So you'll find that the poorer people who live on the peripheries suffer the most. It costs them 40% of their salaries on average to get to work. Yeah. Those who are traveling, the roads are congested again, the potholes are out of line. So it impacts on the productivity of business when your traffic lights are out. Basic things, Toli, like painting line markings on the roads. You can't see them on many roads now. You can't even bring in semi-autonomous vehicles. So, and we're supposed to be a world-class city, and you cannot even get to the basics, like painting lines, traffic lights lying on the ground, roadsides lying on the ground. So this is basic stuff, and we will... unemployment is a national problem, I think, but Joburg's going to suffer the most because it's going to attract people. It's a big city. It's attracting people from around the world, around Africa, and throughout the country. If we don't fix the city and get people working, get the city working, you're going to lose investment, and that's what's happening. People are struggling to invest here. They don't want to unlock the amount of investment that can take place, that creates the jobs, that pays more money to the city. Yeah. The city then can use it. So if you're not going to use your funds effectively, that you do collect, and they're not even collecting what they should be, this all just adds up to the mess that we're in. So it's going to take a leadership change.
Ebrahim Fakir, you probably are going to be the last one to add here. The question of unemployment, it's got to have solutions to it. I was listening to the ANC president today saying municipalities must have investment offices. Why is that being thought of now? Very quickly, if you can.
Well, it should have, but the problem is not merely a city problem. It's a major macroeconomic problem. And I think policy is sort of contradictorily configured nationally. And so the cities and urban planners don't know what to do with that, firstly. But if you look, levels of investment in Johannesburg have gone down. But it's strange that when you look at the poorest regions of Johannesburg, that is the Region G in the way in which the city's administration has grouped places, right? Region B is the wealthiest. Region B's income per household on average has remained static, but it's a very high base. Region G, which is the poorest, and Region D, by the way, which are the poorest, in those regions, income over the last 10 years have gone up on average 1.6%, which says that something in the redistributionary policy, the cross-subsidization policy, is working. The trouble with that welfarist approach is this. When South Africans adopt an approach of we've got this much, and rightly so, we expect a whole lot more. And we're not expecting more out of the realm of the ordinary. We are expecting you to put in place the policies which will attract the investment, unlock it, and then unlock the jobs. There's only one short-term fix because the levels of trust are far too low. I think you need decisive interventions from the private sector. Like COVID funds, you need ring-fence funds for job creation. Youth employment service and so on are not cutting it. That's the first. The second is that I think business leaders have to take a long, hard look at executive pay and start moderating long-term and short-term incentives to start cross-subsidizing entry-level jobs. In the short term, I know this sounds like a terribly socialist measure, but in the short term, it's probably one of the only things that can work until you get trust in government up again and investors are unlocking their pockets.
Julia, I apologize to you. We are unable to put the last question, but we have to close the show, and we're going to close it with our poll question, and we have the results, and you have been asked the question, what will it take to turn the city of Johannesburg around? And there is that graphic on your screen, and the overwhelming majority of you are saying that a strong coalition is what is probably going to do it, and we didn't have a chance to discuss what kind of leadership. We should have had that discussion, but as is the program here, every Sunday we are discussing the road to the elections, and so we will get to this particular question as well. To all of my guests, thank you very much for your time.